Good morning.
Morning.
Ah, there you are, some of you.
Hello.
Good morning.
Howdy.
Good morning.
How are things out there in Missouri lately?
We had quite the thunderstorm last night.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is Jeff.
Mike's here and Mary's here.
Hello.
Don's here.
Oh,
Morning, everybody.
morning.
Hey, Scott Foltz is joining us from Vegas.
Diane!
Good.
How are you?
Good to see you. Schwartzes are from Missouri, joining us from Missouri.
And
Uh,
Saugus.
Missouri.
And Saugus.
August, yes. We have
Newhall.
Northern California represented here too.
San Diego. San Jose. I forgot where I live.
Northern California.
Diane.
And then we have Judith, I wanted Judith last week from England, but she didn't come on. But she's here today. Right?
There she is. Oh, Judith, let me get my phone ready for texting.
Mm-hmm. Why didn't you come on from England last week,
Here.
Judith? Hello? Okay. You're not on audio. I don't hear you, Judith. There we are. We have a minion already at 9:02. We're almost never this prompt. It's good to see everybody.
A new world.
Ready to go. Scott, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank God. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thanks. It's
Yeah.
good to see you. This is one of the advantages to having this online is to be able to bring people together from.
Don, where are you calling from?
I'm
Like
in orbit.
Mars?
Yeah, I'm in orbit. You didn't hear about the launch, evidently. So
Don.
all this Corona stuff is just taking too much away from other news. So
So Don's in space.
yeah.
Out of this world.
Seeing two of you.
My natural habitat.
Yeah. More interesting. Why there's two Judiths?
I had a little challenge with the technology.
There's two Judith. You're on twice.
Cool.
There's one Judith is not enough. You must have
That's her
two.
twin sister.
Exactly. It's because you missed me.
Why? But why weren't you there last week? Why didn't you join us from England? We were hoping you were be our.
Oh, because I was mobile. I was on a train and the connection was not consistent.
Scotland, right?
Yep.
So we'll wait.
And how to make me disappear.
We'll wait for about another minute or two as we get the stragglers. Oh, we've got Colorado's here too. I see we've got the Steins. We have the Steins on.
Good morning from Aurora, Colorado.
There we go. So we got.
Hello, Jeff.
Hello.
Hey, Blazer, make the one that doesn't talk disappear.
3 states. Okay.
Uninvite me or something.
Wait, one second. So we have 3 states and Northern California, which technically isn't a separate state, but
Might as well be.
might as well be. No, but very far away. Let's see. I don't know how to get rid of that one. Okay, here's more people coming on. We have one of our traditional readers just joined us, in addition to who oftentimes reads. We've got Rosemary.
Hi.
Hello. So we've got 15 people on right now. So this is, except for Judith, is there twice still.
Wait, I'm getting rid of it, I think. Did I do it?
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that.
Did I do it though? I think I might have done it.
Yeah, you did. You're done. So, so we're at 14. That's wonderful. So today I posted up, we're studying about Jacob and Esau. We're actually we're actually going to be reading more about Isaac and Esau. This is there's a little Jacob in here too, but a lot about Isaac and Esau. And it's even if you haven't read with us the last few weeks, if you haven't been on, that's okay, because there's always going to be some stuff that
There's 15 people.
that's going to, I think, be do not have to be you do not have to be there previously for most of our weeks. And this week there's some really cool stuff that that I'm glad you get to be, that anybody who's here gets to be here to be a part of, because it's important stuff. I mean, it always is, but there's some really wonderful Midrash we're going to be studying today. So for people who have not been here before, or who have not been here for a while, every Tuesday for the last 4 years, we've been studying the Midrash through the collection, through the Louis Ginsburg Legends of the Jews collection, which was done almost 100 years ago. But it's a really great collection of lots of different Midrashic sources. So there's not one Midrash. There's a lot of sources for Midrash. Some comes from the Talmud, some comes from Midrash collections. Some of them go back 2,000 years. But this is a collection. And some of them are very different from each other in the sense that they seem to be, in some cases, conflicting traditions. But Ginsburg does a really good job of synthesizing, bringing them together, giving us some really great insight into why the Torah presents some stories that are not complete, that are missing things. And the Midrash really tries to answer those missing questions, tries to fill in the blanks, fill in some voids, and also in the process, teach us some lessons. And what's really great about it too is it oftentimes also is very entertaining, very thought-provoking. And so we're going to read some really cool Midrash today that is relevant, not necessarily for what's going on this week, though there always will be some really relevant stuff, but just the way we approach the world. So we're going to take a look, and we actually, so we have 14 participants, but actually it's more than that, because some people are on the phone with their spouses or significant others. So we really have closer to about 20 people right now, which is really cool. Wow. So we're going to start, and remember, I have not muted anybody. So you can some of you have muted yourselves, but remember, you will come on as soon as you talk. So remember that. We had to mute a few people last week because they forgot that they were live, but that's okay.
We're wearing clothes this week.
You're wearing clothes. That's good. It's important.
I didn't realize you could see me last week.
Thank goodness.
Some people, I said, it's good to get into rituals, to get on clothes, even if you don't have to go out. And I am wearing pants. I told people. So yeah, it's good to be in those rituals. So the good thing is you don't need to have anything with you because we're going to share the screen in a moment. We're going to be able to see the text that we're reading. So we're reading from the story from Genesis, from part of what we kind of where we're at is we've been reading about last week, kind of the death of Abraham, and and everybody has the text now in front of them from Genesis. I'm going to scroll down to where we are. We're actually about halfway through this section of Midrash. Went a little too far. And so for people who were there last week, I want to just remind people a couple things. We're reading about Isaac, and the Torah itself does not have a lot about Isaac. Of the three patriarchs, he's really the one that we know the least about. Not really. I mean, we really don't know a lot about Isaac. We know a lot about his family, his father and mother, his children, but not a lot about him. And so the Midrash has to give us some information that we otherwise wouldn't have. And so that's what we're going to be reading today. some about Isaac, and also now something, actually quite a lot, about his about his children. So that's where we are today. And one of the things we talked about last week is that Isaac's sons, Esau and Jacob, are actually archetypes for different ways of life, but specifically Jacob, our ancestor, the ancestor of the Jewish people, represents Jews, and Esau represents the Romans, and he represents a way of life that's almost the flip side of ours, and so he represents not just the Roman Empire, but really everything that the Romans and a pagan way of life, what it stands for. And so today, and we're also occasionally going to be flipping to the Tanakh as well. We have the ability to go to the Tanakh, which I will show right now as well. It is going to be 1 second. We're going to see, hold it a second. We're going to see the Torah. No, it's not, doesn't seem to be coming on.
We have the Torah.
Oh, you got it on there? Okay, good.
You got
So
not the other.
This is, everybody has this now, right? This is the actual text from Genesis. So we're occasionally going to go back to the Torah text. Everybody has that on there. Sees that on their screen now. So this is, this is, we're going to flip back and forth between Parshat Toldot, which we usually read in about October, November time, and we're going to look at the Midrash. So let's start first with the Midrash, and let's also begin with a little blessing that we thank God for the mitzvah of studying Torah. So we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asut b'divrei Torah. The mitzvah of studying Torah. And so we're going to start with kind of a famous section, very well-known section, the Midrash on Esau and Jacob and the sale of the birthright. And the last thing we read actually was about the death of Abraham. According to Midrashic tradition, this happens on the same day as the sale of the birthright, which is interesting. Let's see why. Let's see why these two things go together. May not seem like they go together. Does anybody have any questions before we start? Okay.
Mark, I was just wondering if you could just give a very, very brief recap for the new people that have come on today.
So I'll say I did a little bit, but
yeah, you did.
So Isaac is fairly old when he has sons. He is like his father. He is dealing with the fact that he's been promised to be a great nation, but it doesn't seem like it hasn't happened in a fast or in really a way that's going to make him feel like this is really going to happen. Quite frankly, really doubting whether this is going to happen, whether this promise is real. And so his faith is tested. We know a little bit about Isaac, who was almost sacrificed by his father. And all of those things we've read in the previous weeks, which gets us now to the time where Isaac is now dealing with his sons. And we have this story from Genesis that we know pretty well, the story of the birthright. And so we're going to be reading that section. So I thought maybe we'd have Rosemary. Would you like to take us through the text, the Midrash? You want to read?
Yay, Rosemary.
Okay, Rosemary.
Hi, Rosemary.
You ready?
I think we can hear her.
Rosemary, you on?
Nope.
She's muted.
Yeah, she is.
Mute myself. There.
There you go.
Sorry. Okay, here we go. The sale of the birthright. Though Abraham reached a good old age, beyond the limit of years vouchsafed to later generations, he yet died 5 years before his allotted time. The intention was to let him live to be 180 years old, the same age as Isaac's at his death. But on account of Esau, God brought his life to an abrupt close.
So let's pause right there. The Midrash is dealing with an interesting question. Why doesn't Abraham live as long as his son Isaac? It might not seem like a big deal, but these ages are important. Isaac gets the longest lifespan of any of the patriarchs. Again, even though he's the patriarch we learn the least about, he has there's some interesting things about him that make him especially unique and special. And one of them is that he lives the longest. He lives longer than his father, and he lives longer than his son, Jacob. And so there's a question that the Midrash is asking here. Why would Abraham die earlier? And so they're going to tell us why. It's because of what happens here on this day with Esau. Here it is.
For some time, Esau had been pursuing his evil inclinations in secret. Finally, he dropped his mask, and on the day of Abraham's death, he was guilty of 5 crimes. He ravished a betrothed maiden, committed murder, doubted the resurrection of the dead, scorned the birthright, and denied God. Then the Lord said, I promised Abraham that he should go to his fathers in peace. Can I now permit him to be a witness of his grandson's rebellion against God, his violation of the laws of chastity, and his shedding of blood? It is better for him to die now in peace.
Okay. So the Midrash tells us that Abraham died that day so that he wouldn't have to see what happens. Now, Isaac has to see what happens, but Isaac's going to live for quite some more time. But according to Midrash, and again, if you do the math, Abraham would have died around this time. Abraham would have died around the time of Jacob and Esau being around this age. And so the Midrash does something very clever here, which is it basically says that he dies because he shouldn't have to see this. And Esau, according to the Midrash, doesn't just scorn his birthright. He does some other horrible things on the same day. And he basically goes for it's not really the trifecta, it's the pentef, I don't know, something. There's 5 of them. So he goes through all the really bad ones. He breaks all the commandments that are pretty much not just, these aren't 10 commandments. These are the commandments that are like if you took them to a whole nother level, because he doesn't just commit adultery. He rapes a woman who's already been essentially married. He goes against rabbinic traditions because it says he doubts the resurrection of the dead. And so that one clearly isn't one of the 10 commandments, but it is one that the rabbis put up there with, and we're going to see it in this Midrash, they put it up as a pretty big commandment that again, even though it's not in the Torah at all, they elevated it to the point that it is like doing these other really horrible things. So this kind of gives us an idea of the rabbis' view of what was important, what was really important to do. And what not to do. And so when you see Abraham dying, it's so that God basically did this so he didn't have to see it. Didn't have to know about it.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's read about, now that the Midrash has introduced the fact that Esau actually killed people, which the Bible never says. The Bible never says that Esau is a murderer. It says that he's a hunter, but the rabbis interpret from that he didn't just hunt animals, he hunted the most dangerous game.
Rabbi, can I say something?
Yeah.
I would like to ask people, because there's so many of us on there, if you please mute your microphones, because every noise you make cuts into what you're saying, and
yeah. Well, I think yeah. Thanks, Erica, for making that again. So yeah, if people are not going to be saying anything, just remember you are, unless you mute yourself, we're on mic. But I do want people to be able to talk. So please make sure you unmute yourself and please participate too. Last week, I think we had people who were maybe not sure, but you can jump in. Once you jump in, as Erica says, we'll hear you. But you have to unmute yourself. We will hear you.
Hi, Erica.
There's also a way to raise your hand. And that way Mark can recognize us instead of interrupting.
There's actually too many, unfortunately, there's too many people. I can't do that. So just jump in with your comments, because there are too many people for me to see on one screen and for me to mute and unmute people. So, there you go. So Don raised his hand, it popped up. So, okay. It popped up separately.
Yeah,
yes,
just testing it out here.
Testing it out. All right. So yeah, you can do it. Just don't do it on the, don't do it on, well, the screen isn't big enough for me to see everything that's going on here right now. But most importantly, please jump in with things if you've got something to say. So it is interesting, by the way, that there's another movie out right now about this very subject of hunting people, right? It already garnered some discussion. But yeah, this idea of people hunting other people is something that it existed a long time ago. This kind of fear or horror that people would actually hunt other people. The rabbis interpreted that Esau hunts other people. And again, it's because the Jews during the rabbinic period, when they're writing this Midrash, they dealt with the Romans who did things like this was what they did. They did crazy stuff like this. I mean, we know for them, this was a form of entertainment. I mean, the gladiator battles that were, we see in film, the rabbis watched this live. I mean, they weren't supposed to watch it live. They actually were not supposed to go to gladiator battles, by the way. Unless, by the way, you could save people's lives. If you were able to cheer and try to have people not be killed, you were allowed to go for that sake, to stop people from being killed. But yeah, I mean, this was real. For the Jews who were writing and studying this text, Esau represented the Romans and represented what was possible with under the law. I mean, under practice, under what was being, kind of common practice, common behavior. So the Midrash, though, now tells us specifically who Esau killed on that day. Esau killed people on other days, but on this day in particular, who did he kill?
Oh, you done?
Yeah.
Okay. The men slain by Esau on this day were Nimrod and two of his adjutants. A long-standing feud had existed between Esau and Nimrod because the mighty hunter before the Lord was jealous of Esau, who also devoted himself assiduously to the chase. Once when he was hunting, it happened that Nimrod was separated from his people. Only two men were with him. Esau, who lay in ambush, noticed his isolation and waited until he should pass his covert. Then he threw himself upon Nimrod suddenly and felled him and his two companions, who hastened to his succor. The outcries of the latter brought the attendants of Nimrod to the spot where he lay dead, but not before Esau had stripped him of his garments and fled to the city with them.
All right, so let's pause right there. What happens here and what's going on? And what happens in the Midrash here, which happens a lot of times in the Midrash, is the rabbis wanted to kind of fill in the blanks, as we said. And one of the interesting blanks in the Torah is, who is this guy Nimrod who's mentioned in the book of Genesis in one place? And it says he's a mighty hunter. Now, there must have been more about Nimrod. There must have. He must have been so famous that simply mentioning him in Genesis, everybody knew what they were talking about. And so Nimrod is mentioned during the time after the flood, and it says he's a mighty hunter. Now, the rabbis made a connection between that mighty hunter, Nimrod, and Esau. And so what they do here is they tell an interesting story, an interesting kind of tale that Esau becomes a great hunter to some extent, the greatest hunter, by killing the man who had been the greatest hunter. And it's kind of like a gunslinger story, you know? How do you become the greatest gunslinger? By killing, you know, the other gunslinger, the other guy. And so that's what happens here, is that Esau kills Nimrod. Now, if Nimrod is still alive, I mean, he's
pretty old.
Something magic about him. This guy cannot just be a normal guy. And for those who were with us in previous classes, we do read about Nimrod during the stories of Abraham, because according to the Midrash, Nimrod is the villain, is the guy who tries to make Abraham's life difficult, to say the least. And again, the stories of Nimrod and Abraham fill lots of Midrash. There's a lot of text about him. And it really says nothing else about him in Genesis chapter 10, other than he was a mighty hunter. I'm getting some feedback from somebody. I don't know.
Louise, shush.
So Nimrod is attacked and killed by Esau, and Esau also kills his hunting buddies, his attendants. And so Nimrod being killed allows Esau to officially become the greatest hunter ever. So let's read why Nimrod was so powerful. Now we're going to get another kind of interesting midrash about Nimrod. So Esau kills Nimrod and takes his clothes. So what does it say about Nimrod's clothes?
These garments of Nimrod had an extraordinary effect upon cattle, beasts, and birds. Of their own accord, they would come and prostrate themselves before him who was arrayed in them. Thus, Nimrod and Esau after him were able to rule over men and beasts.
Okay, so they have this garment that he has an effect that animals come to him, so he doesn't even have to chase after them. So if you're a hunter and you don't have to hunt, the animals literally come to you. You're the greatest hunter of all time. So it's a magical garment. But it also says that the garment makes human beings come before him too. Makes the human beings actually bow down before him. And so this goes again back to the only thing we know about Nimrod from the Torah, that he was the first great Gibor. He was the first great hero of the earth. But hero here, Gibor, maybe mean just like a great person, but more like somebody who has superpowers. And so what happens here is that he has these superpowers, but he misuses them. He's somebody who doesn't use his he shouldn't have to use the powers the way he does, but he does. And so Nimrod is not a good person. He's not a superhero in the sense that he's good. He's more of a supervillain. And because Esau is in his kind of tradition, in his likeness, now takes over his mantle literally, Esau is going to now be the same way. And so this establishes what Esau does and why he's a bad guy. So here's what it says.
After slaying Nimrod, Esau hastened cityward in great fear of his victim's followers. Tired and exhausted, he arrived at home to find Jacob busy preparing a dish of lentils. Numerous male and female slaves were in Isaac's household. Nevertheless, Jacob was so simple and modest in his demeanor that, if he came home late from the Beit HaMidrash, he would disturb none to prepare his meal, but would do it himself.
So let's pause right there. So let's talk about what the Midrash just did, which is really interesting. So it says in the Torah, right, that what happens here in this story, in the birthright story, which, by the way, happens immediately after the boys grow up, and it says Esau becomes a hunter. So all we know is Esau's a hunter, and it says Jacob was a mild man who stayed in camp, that he dwelt in the tents. Well, of course, it also says Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah favored Jacob. The next line is, once when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the open famished. And the Torah goes on to say, and Esau said to Jacob, give me some of that red stuff to gulp down, for I am famished, which is why he is named Edom, which means red. So he has a nickname, Edom. His descendants are called Edomites, and it's from this red soup, this red stew that he has. Now, this is the first story of food and the sale of the birthright, and then what will later be the sale of the blessing. Now, interestingly, in this story, what we have is we have the line that the Torah gave us that Esau comes in famished from the open. The rabbis interpret that he was hunting or he was out. No, that's not enough. They actually say this is the day that he went out and he killed people. So who did he kill? He killed Nimrod and his followers. And he comes home. And of course, what has Jacob been doing? Jacob's been studying in the Beit HaMidrash. He's been studying Torah because that's what Jacob does. So Esau hunts, kills, Jacob studies. But then the Midrash is asking an interesting question, or answers an interesting question. Why is Jacob cooking? Doesn't Jacob, number one, he has better things to do with his life, but also, doesn't Isaac and Rebekah, don't they have people to help cook food? So the Midrash says, oh yeah, they have people to cook food, but that's just another example of why Jacob is so modest and so special, so humble that he would not ask servants to cook for him. And not only that, but that he's cooking for his father. He's cooking for his dad as a way of taking care of his father. And why is he cooking for his father in particular now? Keep going, Rosemary.
On this occasion, he was cooking lentils for his father to serve to him as his mourner's meal after the death of Abraham. Adam and Eve had eaten lentils after the murder of Abel, and so had the parents of Haran when he perished in the fiery furnace. The reason they are used for the mourner's meal is that the round lentil symbolizes death. As the lentil rolls, so death, sorrow, and mourning constantly roll about among men from one to the other.
All right. So here we have a little Midrash about the fact that, again, the Midrash reminds us that Abraham died this day. And so why is Jacob cooking lentils in particular? Because this is what people do at a house of mourning. They cook lentils. They serve lentils. Did anybody know that, by the way? That's a traditional food of mourning, lentils. So that's still something to this very day that people eat while they're mourning. And again, because you're not supposed to cook for yourself, people will prepare these dishes for the mourners. They'll prepare prepare for the mourners a lentil soup or a lentil stew. And so the Midrash here is teaching us a lesson, which is, why are lentils in particular used? And it says because the lentil is very round. I mean, if you look at a lentil, it's almost like it's a perfect circle. It's not an oval. It's not like a normal bean shape. it's actually round, circular, almost perfectly circular. Now, some people will say a circle represents the circle of life. You know, that life is a circle. Rabbis don't say that here. They say it's a circle because, like a circle or a wheel, death rolls to everybody. It doesn't stay in one place. It goes from one person to another, that everybody is touched by death. And so it's more of the commonality of it, the fact that everybody will come in contact with death. And so this is an interesting tradition about death. And again, you know, we have other food traditions today. We make chicken soup for people when they're sick. But we also have a tradition of giving foods that are round or that are circular, actually specifically at a funeral, at a shiva. So eggs are also very common, hard-boiled eggs. I mean, not just eggs, scrambled eggs, but literally serving round an egg is also considered to be a very common, appropriate dish for the shiva, for shiva food, the suda, for the meal. So this is the other connection back to Abraham's death and the shiva that happened after him. So let's read the story. And you know, a lot of you know this story from the Torah. Now you're going to see how the Midrash fills in the blanks, because the Torah story is only 4 verses. Actually, let's take a look at it before we read the Midrash. Let's just do a very quick look at the Torah before we look at the back at the Midrash. So the Torah story is the very end of chapter 26. So if we go to the very end, it says, went too far. Sorry, the end of 25. Right before 26. So it says, once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the open famished. Esau said to Jacob, give me some of that red stuff to gulp down, for I'm famished. And then Jacob says, sell me your birthright. And Esau said, I'm at the point of death, so what is the birthright? What is the use to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore to him, he sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob then gave Esau bread and lentil stew. He ate and drank, and he rose and went away. Thus did Esau spurn the birthright. So that conversation goes on for 4 verses, or whatever, 5 verses. Let's take a look at the actual Midrash now, which is going to give us a little bit more of the discussion. It gives us something, a few lines extra, if you will. So let's start. Rosemary, Esau accosted
Jacob thus, why are you preparing lentils? Jacob, because our grandfather passed away. They shall be a sign of my grief and mourning, that he may love me in the days to come. Esau, you fool, do you really think it possible that man should come to life again after he has been dead and has smoldered in the grave? He continued to taunt Jacob. Why do you give yourself so much trouble? He said. Lift up your eyes and you will see that all men eat whatever comes to hand, fish, creeping and crawling creatures, swine's flesh, and all sorts of things like these. And you vex yourself about a dish of lentils.
So that's an interesting little speech from Esau, because we get into a discussion about the world to come and whether there's life after death. And Esau doesn't believe in a life after death, which of course is why he can so easily behave the way he does, because he doesn't think there's any accounting for his actions in the world to come.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
You know how we've talked before about in the Talmud how Edom is often code for Greeks, Romans, or whoever.
Not
How
Christians yet. Not Christians yet. Clearly Romans.
Just Romans. Is it, how much of the Midrash is drawing from that or expanding on that as far as painting Esau as a horrible human?
No, that's a very big part of it. We talked about it a lot more last week, but again, as I said at the beginning, this is Rome. These are the flip side of our coin. So everything that we do, they almost do the opposite. And so when it comes to eating, they'll eat whatever they want, including, as you can see, a little thing in here about eating pork. So it basically has here Esau in the role of a Roman or somebody who, again, is completely living the opposite life of a Jew, basically saying, why are you worried about eating lentils? Which is not, again, never was a fancy food. So he's saying, you're sitting here worrying about making lentils, like that's a big deal for our Father. And so it allows the rabbis to then throw in this whole, idea that look at what is part of this mentality. Look at this approach, this philosophy. So it's not just the fact that they're Romans, it's what do the Romans represent? What kind of lifestyle do they represent? And once you kind of given up this idea that there's a life after death, that there's a accounting for what you do in this world, then you don't have to follow the traditions, because what difference does it make? You don't live like that. And so it's really interesting that Jacob and Esau are really having a discussion between a Jew and a Roman, but really between these different philosophies of what does your life really mean? Are we part of something bigger, and is this world the only existence that we have?
Right.
And so this is what happens here. This is why this discussion, which again in the Torah goes back and forth. Esau speaks first, then Jacob, then Esau, then Jacob. There's 2 lines for each. We get a little bit more here, and this is some really powerful stuff. This discussion encapsulates not a discussion about whether you want a birthright or not, but whether this really means are you going to live a life? Are you going to live a life of holiness, or are you going to live a life that means nothing? And again, the different lifestyles that those represent, which again, in the Orthodox world today, Esau still represents the ultimate non-Jewish lifestyle, which interestingly can be adopted by Jews. So there is a point to this, that it's not really about Romans, or it's not really about pagans. It's about anybody who doesn't live a Jewish lifestyle. So that's important to remember too, that Esau is not necessarily always going to be somebody who isn't born Jewish. And of course, Esau didn't have to be like this. Esau was born to Isaac, so he didn't have to be this way. So again, there is another sense to this, though, that we also, I don't want to throw this away either. Look at the way Esau is behaving on the day that his grandfather passed away. He doesn't seem to even care about it. He doesn't seem to be paying attention to it at all. So here's Jacob's answer back to Esau. What difference does it make what you eat? Here's what he says.
Jacob, if we act like other men, what shall we do on the day of the Lord, the day on which the pious will receive their reward, when a herald will proclaim, where is he that weighs the deeds of men? Where is he that counts? Esau, is there a future world? Or will the dead be called back to life? If it were so, why has not Adam returned? Have you heard that Noah, through whom the world was raised anew, has reappeared? Yea, Abraham, the friend of God, more beloved of him than any man, has he come to life again? Jacob, if you are...
Hold it right there. So Jacob says to Esau, his brother, how will we exist in the world to come if we don't behave in a good way? And Esau says to him, but that's exactly the point. Why? How do you know there's another world? Has anybody ever come back from it? So you tell me, Jacob, smart guy, who's come back to life? All these great people who lived before Adam, Noah, even Abraham. So he picks up the three people that we know the most about so far in Genesis, the ones who have kind of the closest connection to God. None of these people have come back to life. So why should I believe there's a world to come when no one's ever come back from it? So Esau's challenge is a legitimate challenge. It's a challenge that almost everybody who's ever thought about immortality or the world to come would ask naturally. How do we know? There's no proof that this is going to happen. And so what are you basing this on, Jacob? How do you make this claim? So here's what Jacob says.
Jacob, if you are of the opinion that there is no future world and that the dead do not rise to new life, then why do you want your birthright? Sell it to me now while it is yet possible to do so. Once the Torah is revealed, it cannot be done. Verily, there is a future world in which the righteous receive their reward. I tell you this, lest you say later, I deceived you.
So what's going on here?
Doesn't really answer the question.
No, but he does something very interesting with him, which is that he essentially tricked him into selling the birthright by this, which is that the birthright clearly isn't stuff in this world. The birthright really represents the ability to kind of be the inheritor of all the stuff that Isaac and Abraham have built up, which is this idea that and again, it's connected to the blessing, which we have later, but this birthright there's not a monetary value for it in this world, which is why Jacob's able to convince his brother to sell it to him, because he says, look, you don't value it. You don't think that there's anything important to it, intrinsic value to it. So sell it to me now. What difference does it make? Now you're going to see, well, this bowl of soup, he's basically saying, you're going to sell your soul. And that's literally what he's saying. You sell your soul for a bowl of soup because you don't believe there's a soul anyways. Now I will tell you, there's going to be some other stuff that comes with the soup. Even the Torah, by the way, tells us that. The Torah allows us to have that because there's bread that comes along with it. Because it says that Esau gave him bread and lentil stew. He didn't just give him the lentil stew. He gave him something else. Now, because of that, the rabbis interpret that there may be some other stuff that Jacob gave him in addition to just a bowl of soup. But he's basically saying, what do you care? Sell your soul for a bowl of soup because you don't you don't think there's a soul. So it's really this kind of interesting idea that if you don't believe there's a soul, then you can sell your soul and you don't care. And
Mark,
yeah,
there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
If you read the Torah, Esau comes across as somebody who's being victimized, and Jacob comes across as a trickster. And the rabbis are picking Jacob up and turning it around the other way. They're redeeming Jacob because the Jacob in Torah doesn't look like a very nice person.
Yes. And so that, keep that in mind. Now there is still a question with it, with the rabbis. The rabbis are not going to let him off completely. I will tell you that. You're going to see a line today, I promise, very soon, where you can see the rabbis, even the rabbis are still, or at least some of them, are not 100% convinced that what Jacob does is not a deception, okay? So keep that in mind. So they know that is, but you're right. There's a problem here, which is that Jacob seems to trick his brother and does something here that's not very nice. Now, again, the rabbis are right in picking up, though. Well, if is Esau really that hungry? Is Esau really that? Does Esau really not care for his birthright? So he cares so little for it. So the Torah does give us that line, because it says that Esau spurned the birthright. I mean, the rabbis are picking up on a line from the Torah, which is that he spurned it, that Jacob maybe tricked him or took it away from him, but that Esau had no value for it in the first place. So the rabbis are here adding to what else Esau didn't value, which is a sense of your actions count, that there actually is an accounting, that there most importantly is something in the next world that's even more important than this world. Because the rabbis are going to do something even more amazing here, which is that they're going to say it had nothing to do with the money. Now, again, that's not what the Torah says. And if the Torah, so you're right, Ronnie, but it goes even further than that because of what the Midrash does with the actual birthright. Because we assume that on the face of it, what is the birthright? It's the inheritance. And let's remind people what that means. That when Isaac dies, his property gets split up into three. He has two sons, but it gets split up to three. And the oldest son, who is by a moment, Esau, gets two of the three. So he gets 2/3 of the inheritance. He gets twice as much of all the stuff that Isaac has when he dies. 2/3 of it goes to him. And remember, this inheritance is a big issue in the Torah. It's a big issue for Jacob and his sons. It's a big issue later on in the stories of the Tanakh. This idea that the oldest son inherits twice as much as all the other children is a huge, huge factor. So that law, that tradition, is a huge part of what's going on throughout the Torah, and whether people get that inheritance, whether they spurn that inheritance as we have in this scene, or whether they die and therefore the inheritance falls on the next oldest son. So this law, primogeniture, is a really important law. You have to deal with that law. That law isn't going anywhere. And so the rabbis are playing with it just as the Torah plays with it, because the Torah does play with that. They play that game all the time. And of course, we have it in almost every great fairy tale or those great stories of the three sons. Whenever there's a third, it's always the youngest child that ends up with everything because the older sons, spurn it or get caught or die. And so then it always falls on the younger child. But that goes against what's supposed to happen. So keep that in mind. It's a great point, Ronnie. But it's also, you're going to see, on one hand, the rabbis don't give up on the fact that Jacob does something a little shady, but also it's not about the money. I mean, they say that. You're going to see it right now. Here we go.
Jacob was little concerned about the double share of the inheritance that went with the birthright. What he thought of was the priestly service, which was the prerogative of the firstborn in ancient times. And Jacob was loth to have his impious brother Esau play the priest, he who despised all divine service.
Yep. And so here it says, the rabbis get him off the hook even in a different way, which is that it wasn't about the money, that Jacob wasn't going after the money, that he was going after the ability to bless and to have the power of the priesthood, which again was part of the priestly honor, and that would have come to the oldest or to the child who was the firstborn normally. And so the rabbis actually say, no, it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about it. It was about this other part, which is interesting because that also gets Jacob off the hook for being simply, superficial and unfortunately something that kind of comes out of this story, which is that Jacob is our ancestor, is all about the money. So this is something the rabbis kind of built into the Midrash right away. Don't let anybody say that Jacob did it for the money. So,
Mark,
yes.
am I a little confused? These aren't the twins then. I can't remember.
Yes.
They are Jacob and Esau.
Yeah.
Those are the twins. Okay. So
yeah,
then
the thing that's crazy here is that even with twins, the one that's born just moments before gets twice as much.
That's what I was just going to ask
So
you.
the
Who's
crazy
the older?
thing is twins don't get to split it. There's no, but twins who are born at the same day. The twin that comes out first gets twice as much, which makes, again, this law even more, on the face of it, so silly. The Torah seems to accept that it's a tough law, that it's not a law that necessarily really is a good law even, but they can't the Torah can't fight against it because it is from what we know in the ancient world, it's almost a universal law, which is that the oldest child inherits more than the other ones. So the Torah fights against it, clearly fights against it constantly. And so does the Midrash, so does the rabbinic text. But it's there. Yeah.
Did I miss the part of the Midrash where Jacob pulls Esau back into the womb? So he's...
Yeah, that was last week.
Sorry.
It was last week. So that this idea that they were fighting even in the womb for who would come out first, yes, is there. And the Midrash, just for those who were not there last week, is even more powerful, because what it says is that they were fighting and that Jacob could have kept fighting, but he didn't, because it was literally killing Rebekah. And Jacob did the noble thing and stopped fighting so that Esau could get out. Esau took advantage of that, got out, but Jacob did it to spare his mother. Interesting. That he stopped the fighting because it was literally killing Rebekah. Wow. So this is where the Midrash goes with that. So let us continue with this.
The scorn manifested by Esau for the resurrection of the dead, he felt also for the promise of God to give the Holy Land to the seed of Abraham. He did not believe in it, and therefore he was willing to cede his birthright and the blessings attached thereto in exchange for a mess of pottage. In addition, Jacob paid him in coin, and besides, he gave him what was more than money, the wonderful sword of Methuselah, which Isaac had inherited from Abraham and bestowed upon Jacob.
Okay.
So tell me about the wonderful sword of Methuselah.
Yeah, I knew our...
You knew I was going to ask you about
Harry Potter. I knew our Harry Potterist would want to know what the sword of Methuselah was. She wants to acquire the sword of Methuselah.
How many points do I get? How many hit points does it get?
Yeah, this is actually more of a Dungeons and Dragons type of. Yes. This is more of. This is more of a Dungeons D&D sword, but wait, hold it a second before we get into the sword of Methuselah. Why is it? I mean, it's obviously valuable, but here's the bigger point. So Esau doesn't believe in the soul, so he doesn't care about that. He also doesn't care about another big part of the birthright, which is the inheritance of the land of Israel. And so he didn't care about it. He didn't care about whether or not his descendants, Esau's descendants, get the land. That could have been Esau's descendants. Instead, Jacob fights for or not fights for, but makes sure he gets the birthright so that he gets the land. Now, the interesting thing about it is it doesn't say that Esau didn't want the land. He just didn't believe that it could be passed in the form of a blessing, which means if I'm stronger than my brother, if I have a bigger army, if I have more children, better chance of defending it, whatever, taking it, I don't need a birthright. I just need to have a bigger army. I just need to be more powerful. And so what's so interesting about this is that Esau is able to kind of make sense of what he wants to do in this world, because for him it's might makes right. And for Jacob sees the big picture. And for his descendants, he's going to say, look, I know that a birthright and the blessing that are going to come with this are much more important. Those are going to be the things that are of value, because that is going to make sure my descendants are still here thousands of years later, you and I. So what's interesting about this further is that because the value of this is huge, it says that Jacob also paid his brother, gave him money in this world, gave him something of value. So it says that he gives his brother the, in addition to the soup, he gives him money. And then in addition to that, he gives him the sword of Methuselah, sometimes known as the sword of Enoch sword, which is, according to Midrash, according to legend, has the power to defeat any human being, and is also has the power to defeat demons. It's a magical sword. And so what people, it's kind of like one of those magical items like a holy grail, or like Nimrod's garment that we just read about. These things they're powerful items that are magical and that give people powers essentially of like a wizard. And so this is what and again, I'm sure there's people searching for the sword of Methuselah or the sword of Enoch. And again, why does this work so well for Methuselah? Well, we know that he lives the longest of anybody in the Bible. So, the idea of him having a sword, of having him have something that was powerful, must have been how he was able to, live as long as he did. So, again, we don't know a lot about Methuselah in the Bible, other than he lived for a really long time, and his father Enoch didn't live a long time and actually was taken up into heaven. And so the fact that these guys have wondrous things is an interesting, kind of myth on people who are, we don't know a lot about, but there must have been some interesting legends and some interesting backstory about these guys that the Bible doesn't keep. But again, that these are part of the kind of the filling in the blanks and giving us some backstory that we don't have.
Mark, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I don't know why, to me, this seems a little bit like the resurrection of Jesus, offering something. Am I making a weird connection?
No, I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily in this section as much, but there definitely are some sections, there's some, this concept of resurrection was important at the time. And Jesus is really, the stories of Jesus really build on what was seen as a crucial part of belief by the rabbis, which was that the physical body would be resurrected. That it's not just a soul, but that there's actually a physical resurrection. So, I mean, that is in Christianity. You're going to see some stuff here that I think really is has some interesting elements that compare to Christianity. But again,
is the ultimate message offering hope?
Yeah, but it's also as the descendants of Jacob, what is it that our ancestor was able to get for us that Esau could have had and doesn't have and doesn't deserve? And that's an important idea here, really important idea here. And so keep that in mind. I will tell you, for those of you that are watching, Altered Carbon on Netflix, the people that live for a really long time are called Meths because they're like Methuselah. So Methuselah is not somebody we know a lot about in the Torah, but in Midrash, and more importantly in the pseudepigrapha and the apocrypha, Methuselah is very important and takes on, there's a lot of Midrash, a lot of stories, a lot of legends about him, because the Torah just throws out this fascinating fact that he lives for 969 years. And why? I mean, there's got to be an answer for why this guy lives longer than all these other, we call them antediluvian, all the pre-flood guys. And so, it just kind of begs the question, what was special about this guy? So, so this isn't the end. So there's more that comes, and it's one of those things. It's a prize package, and there's more. And what did you get with that birthright?
Esau made a game of Jacob. he invited his associates to feast at his brother's table, saying, "Know what I did to this Jacob? I ate his lentils, drank his wine, amused myself at his expense, and sold my birthright to him." All that Jacob replied was, "Eat, and may it do you good." But the Lord said, "You despise the birthright, therefore I shall make you despised in all generations." And by way of punishment for denying God and the resurrection of the dead, the descendants of Esau were cut off from the world.
Yep. So the rabbis are teaching us a really important lesson. You don't want to be like Esau. And what happens to Esau's descendants is they're despised in all generations. Now, this doesn't mean that Jacob's descendants are also not despised in all the generations. But this, again, is the flip side of the same coin. And we read this in last week's Midrash, that both the Romans and the Jews are despised by everybody for different reasons, but they're despised. And furthermore, because they denied God, because they denied resurrection, Esau's descendants deserve what they get. It's not just that they despised the birthright, that they didn't value that, but that they denied God. They didn't that this moment in time sets the descendants, Esau and his descendants, on a whole different trajectory. Now, why is this so important? It's important because Esau is our cousin. I mean, he's not, or, he's our uncle if we're the descendants of, his family and our families are Close. Isaac's children, remember, Isaac is the one that gets blessed. And so if Abraham's the father of many nations and he has other sons like Ishmael, we have here another closer relative to us even than Ishmael, even than the Midianites and all the other children that come out of Abraham. It's Esau and his descendants who are so close to us, they could have been us. And that the rabbis have to constantly kind of remind us, even as they're reminding themselves, that Esau is so close to being us. They're our twin. And there's a reason why they're not just our brother, but that they're our twin. Because again, they're not another coin, they're the same coin, they're the flip side of the same coin, which means that we're the same coin. And so because of that, we're really close to them, and they're really close to us. They're not a whole different race. We could somehow say, they're like the children of Ham, or they're like some other nation that that the Torah mentions as being descendants of Noah. Now these are us in a kind of a mirror image of us. And so this is what freaks us out, is that how easy is it to go to the other side? How easy is it to be on the other side of the coin? We're already there. It's us. And so that's why Esau represents for us almost the inner part, the part of us that's the dark side. Not that there's another side, that there's but it's within us already.
The rabbis are also dealing with another issue that was real in their lives when they were writing this stuff. They're trying to explain how is it that this holy nation is being subjugated and exiled and dominated, and this evil nation seems to be in charge of everything. How could God let that happen? Right?
Yeah, and so
and the story is kind of like explaining that.
Yeah. And so what happens here is that
paragraph.
Yeah, is that it is so close to us. I like to say that this is something that the rabbis will use throughout the Talmud, throughout Midrash, in our minds. Esau is always there, and it's more than just he's the representative of the Romans, though. It's that he is within us. And I like to say it's the I know we don't have Doreen, who's our other really big Star Trek fan. This is the enemy within. This is when Captain Kirk gets split into two. And so this is the problem is how do you deal with this? Now, the interesting thing in the rabbi's mind is that it would almost be better if we don't have that Esau side within us. They'd be okay with that. There is this sense, though, even they recognize that if Jacob and Esau were the same, if they were the same person, if they hadn't been split into two, which the rabbis kind of recognize that a twin is a split of two. I mean, they didn't understand the biology of it necessarily the way we do, but they did understand that there is a oneness to the twins. And so they recognize that somehow if the two could have been one, that would have been the ultimate person, that this would have been almost couldn't happen, because if any one individual had the powers of Jacob and Esau together, it would have been the superhuman person. And so they recognize that. And that's part of what's going on here too, is that this is something that splits into two, and that we get maybe a pure and a not so pure version. Maybe it's also the movie Twins with Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito, but there is this element to it. And again, let's read, because Ronnie's point is good, but I wanted you to read these last couple paragraphs to understand that, again, the rabbis do have a respect for Esau that doesn't go away. And remember, Esau is the ancestor of the Amalekites. Esau's descendant, one of his descendants, will become our ultimate. It's not really just our nemesis. They are our eternal enemy that's there and always lurking in the darkness.
So Mark, are they using this in some symbolic way to teach us of good and evil, and how that each one of us possess this ability? And this is what we ask for: forgiveness and humbleness. And
I think I do think that that's there. I think that, look, I like it more than I develop it more. Probably I think about it more than they did, because they really did they were really dealing with the reality of the Roman Empire. And again, I said last week, there was a certain audacity to that too. The fact that the Jews elevated themselves to be the other side of the Roman Empire is pretty amazing. That the Jewish people, who were a tiny fraction of the Roman Empire, would see themselves, that we would see ourselves as the antithesis or on the same level as the Romans. So that's pretty cool too, that they had this audacity, the rabbis had this audacity to see us like them. So all these elements are there, but let's look at what also, and again, and there's even more. Okay.
As not was holy to Esau, Jacob made him swear concerning the birthright by the life of their father, for he knew Esau's love for Isaac, that it was strong. Nor did he fail to have a document made out, duly signed by witnesses, setting forth that Esau had sold him the birthright together with his claim upon a place in the cave of Machpelah.
So what also was in that birthright? Your place in the grave. Being in Hebron, being in the cave of Machpelah. Esau also gave up a place that he would have had in the cave. Interesting. Now, the other thing we want to point out is he didn't just sell it for a bowl of soup. Well, he did, but that wasn't good enough to have an exchange. Jacob wanted it in writing. According to the Midrash, he actually got it in writing, signed by witnesses, which is what you need to have when you have a document. In the rabbinic part of rabbinic law is you got to get two witnesses to sign your document, not one, but two witnesses at least to sign your document, which is why we have witnesses sign the ketubah. It's why we have witnesses sign a bill of sale. It's so that the document that you signed isn't just signed by the people who are agreeing to it, but that there are other parties, and they should be neutral parties, who can sign it and notarize it and basically say, I know these people to be who they say they are, and I know these people that they agreed to do what they're saying they're doing. So this is part of what the rabbinic mind said, no. It wasn't just an agreement. It wasn't just a verbal agreement. They got it in writing. And part of the reason why they get it in writing is this, that Esau was still favored by Isaac. And Jacob seems to be worried that even though Esau made a deal, Isaac would go back on the deal. And there seems to be this understanding that Esau loves Isaac and will swear on Isaac's life because he values Isaac as well, that it goes both ways. And there seems to be this idea that this relationship between Isaac and Esau is maybe an ongoing issue. And we know, of course, it is, because we're going to read the story soon. We're going to read the story in 2 chapters where we actually have the blessing. So that's in chapter 27. So this is chapter 25, the end of chapter 25 we just read. We have chapter 26. We're about to look at the Midrash there, but then we're probably not going to get to it today, and that is the story of the blessing. Now, people forget that there's 2 stories. They conflate the stories. They think the birthright and the blessing are the same stories. The rabbis kind of help make that happen by putting so much more into the birthright than just your inheritance. But the blessing and the birthright are separate. They're, again, for the rabbis, they link them together. But there are 2 separate stories, and they are 2 separate things that Esau spurns or that gives up. And it's really almost important to keep in mind. I mean, the fact that there's 2 things is really important, that there's a birthright and a blessing that he gives up, that he doesn't just give up one thing, he gives up pretty much everything. And it does seem like the blessing is more of the spiritual part of it. But here, the rabbis have kind of given us that the birthright was also spiritual. And let's read this last line, which again gets back to Ronnie's point of Jacob not looking so good.
Though no blame can attach to Jacob for all this, yet he secured the birthright from him by cunning. And therefore, the descendants of Jacob had to serve the descendants of Esau.
Yeah. So again, even though Ronnie's point is true, that the rabbis don't feel comfortable with Jacob deceiving his brother, though again, deceiving his brother seems to be an important part of the story. Not deceiving, but taking advantage of his brother. He definitely didn't lie to him, but he maybe took advantage of him. The rabbis have less of an issue, or maybe we have less of an issue with what happens in this story, because Esau really does seem to not care about it. But the blessing story, clearly we see Esau cares about giving up his blessing. We'll see it when we read it. We'll see it in the Midrash, and we'll look at the Torah again. But it also seems to be that the rabbis don't want us to think that Jacob gets away with anything. And so why are we in the predicament? Why are the rabbis in the predicament of having the Romans be in charge? It's because it didn't happen in a quite kosher way. That Jacob is not quite without at least taking advantage of a situation. Again, the rabbis are kind of they're not 100% comfortable with what Jacob does, though Ronnie's point is they really try to get him off the hook, which again seems to be not what the Torah is actually teaching us. The Torah is actually teaching us that Jacob does some kind of shady business, and that it's not that Jacob doesn't feel right about it. I mean, that's the interesting thing is we're going to see in the blessing story, Jacob doesn't like doing what he does. In this case, Jacob doesn't seem to be he doesn't seem to be torn at all with what he does here with the suit. He seems to say, "Hey, I'll sell it to you, and I'll sell it to you for something you clearly have no understanding of what the value is." So it is it is here though in the Midrash. This is an explanation for why do we serve the Romans. It's because of what Jacob does here. Anybody have any points or questions on the birthright story? The birthright forsooth. All right. So if we don't, then we're going to move into a Isaac story. And I will tell you, an Isaac story, it's really the Isaac story, because this is really the only story that we have about Isaac that is really kind of about him, where he does something. And it's a couple stories, actually. I mean, they're connected stories. Maybe it's a few chapters of the same story, if you will, but it's only one chapter in the whole Torah. And let's take a look at it in the Torah first. Let's just take a moment to look at the Torah story. It's Genesis chapter 26. And this is the way the story begins. It begins with the introduction. There was a famine in the land, aside from the previous famine that occurred in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Avimelech, the king of the Philistines in Gerar. The Lord had appeared to him, to Isaac, and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land which I point out to you. Reside in the land, and I will be with you. Bless you. I will assign all these lands to you and to your heirs, fulfilling the oath that I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your heirs as numerous as the stars in heaven, and assign to your heirs all these lands, so that all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your heirs. Inasmuch as Abraham obeyed me and kept my commandments, and kept my charge, obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my laws, and my teachings. So Isaac stayed in Gerar." That is what the Torah tells us happens when Isaac has a famine too. Now, what's interesting, of course, is that the Torah points it out, but kind of just, not in enough detail, that Abraham, when he had a famine, he goes down to Egypt. That he actually leaves the country. And so when God says, "Do not go down to Egypt, stay in the land which I point out to you," it's almost as if God is saying, don't do what your father Abraham did. Don't leave the land. And Isaac is a notable patriarch for a lot of reasons. He's only married to one woman. He lives to be 180. He's also
He never left Israel.
a patriarch who never leaves the land. Never leaves the land. And so there's something special in that. The rabbis recognize there's something special in Isaac never leaving the land of Israel, of all the patriarchs. Now, that doesn't mean that his life is going to be so easy there, but he doesn't leave the land. He doesn't escape or go outside of the land. Now, let's look at what happens here, because the Torah is going to tell us something very interesting, which is that when he's in the land of Avimelech, in that area, the men of the place asked about his wife, and he said, "She is my sister," for he was afraid to say "my wife," thinking the men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah, for she is beautiful. When some time had passed, Avimelech, king of the Philistines, looking out of the window, saw Isaac fondling his wife Rebekah. Okay, so this story is, again, very short, very brief, but it is a reminder of the two stories that we have of Abraham. And remember, there's not one story, there's two stories. We often remember the one of Abraham and Pharaoh. We sometimes forget the one of Abraham and Avimelech. Now, whether this is the same Avimelech or a different Avimelech, we don't really know. It could be that it's the same one, in which case the guy lives a very long life and is involved with two guys, a father and a son, Abraham and Isaac. But it's also possible that Avimelech, which literally means my father the king, is what the Canaanites called their kings. And we know that they did. Avimelech was my father the king. It's a title. And so it could be more of a title than a name. And so we have a story that Rebekah is made to say that she is Isaac's wife, Isaac's sister, not his wife. Same thing. Now here, clearly is not his sister, as the rabbi sometimes would say that Abraham was not really lying and saying that Sarah was his sister, because Sarah might have been his sister from another mother. All these kinds of different twists and turns. There's no way to say that this is not a lie, which of course begs the question, why do you have to stretch the truth for Abraham as well? But again, this idea that he had to do this in order to keep his wife alive, to keep his self really alive, this is obviously a problem. What's interesting about this story is that Avimelech actually sees Isaac, according to the Torah, fondling his wife. Now, it doesn't literally say necessarily fondling. The interesting thing is what the Torah, the Hebrew in the Torah is yitzachek metzachek, which is a play on the word Isaac. Isaac is playing with his wife. And the translation here, which is a traditional translation, understands this to mean that he is sexually playing with his wife. But of course, it is a play on the word. It's a play on, it's tzachek. We're having a game, a play with Isaac's name. And so Isaac is playing with his wife, and Avimelech actually sees it. He sees it happening. And the Torah says, Avimelech sent Isaac and said, "So she is your wife. Why did you say she's my sister?" And Isaac said, "Because I thought I might lose my life on account of her." And Avimelech said, "What have you done to us? One of the people might have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." And Avimelech then charged all the people, "Anyone who molests this man or his wife shall be put to death." And so it then says, Isaac sowed in the land and reaped 100-fold that same year. The Lord blessed him. So it all ends up being okay. But let's look at what the Midrash does with this, because the Midrash is going to teach us some lessons here. And some of them you probably will guess already what it is that they take away from this. Let's take a look. Let's read this Midrash. And this is probably, again, it's probably what we'll finish with, this section, which is the Midrash on chapter 26, which is not necessarily the most known or most studied part of the book of Genesis. I would venture to say it's on the bottom of what people oftentimes remember or study when they're studying the book of Genesis. So here's chapter 26. You've just read it. Now you'll read it in the Midrash. The life of Isaac.
Isaac with the Philistines. The life of Isaac was a faithful reflex of the life of his father. Abraham had to leave his birthplace, so also Isaac. Abraham was exposed to the risk of losing his wife, so also Isaac. The Philistines were envious of Abraham, so also of Isaac. Abraham long remained childless, so also Isaac. Abraham begot one pious son and one wicked son, so also Isaac. And finally, as in the time of Abraham, so also in the time of Isaac, a famine came upon the land.
So again, So again, it's part of this is that Isaac and Abraham, Isaac lives his father's life in a lot of ways. And so here they just gave us a whole bunch of ways that he lived his life. And again, if Esau is like Ishmael, then Isaac and Jacob is like Isaac then. So again, these are maybe some of the obvious, most obvious point is that Isaac lives out a life like his father. All right, but here's where they go different.
At first, Isaac intended to follow the example of his father and remove to Egypt. But God appeared to him and said, "You're a perfect sacrifice, without a blemish, and as a burnt offering is made unfit if it is taken outside of the sanctuary. So you would be profaned if you should happen outside of the Holy Land. Remain in the land and endeavor to cultivate it. In this land dwells the Shekinah, and in days to come, I will give to your children the realms possessed by mighty rulers, first a part thereof, and the whole in the messianic time."
Okay, now that's, we got to talk about that. So the reason that Isaac's not allowed out of the land is because there's something special about him that is unlike even his father. And we know that he was already, well, he was sacrificed. He was offered up as an offering. And he wasn't sacrificed then, but he actually is perpetually like an offering in that he's perfect. And that leaving the land of Israel would render him no longer perfect. And so he wants him to be there all the time and to be perfect, be in the land. He'll never gain any imperfections if he stays in the land. And he tells them that because of that, because you'll stay in this land, I will give to your descendants the realms possessed by mighty rulers. First the part thereof, and then the whole in messianic times. Now I want to look at that last part and understand what we just read, because this is really important and very relevant. Because what it tells us is that the land of Israel, we know, I mean, we've read it, you know it, is our promised land. I mean, that's not a surprise. But the interesting thing is that God is telling him, if you don't leave the land, your children will merit it. And even when it's possessed by other people, it's still yours.
There's something else really deep here, Mark.
Yep.
Joseph, Mary, and Jesus went to Egypt.
Yep.
Right? Which means Jesus left the land. And perhaps the rabbis are saying the real Messiah can't come from Jesus because he's not an offering the way Isaac was.
Could be. That's a nice, interesting midrash. I don't know that the rabbis were as steeped in Jesus. It doesn't seem like they know the Jesus story really well, and that's only, by the way, in one of the Gospels. So it's not. It's possible. I like it, but
Feel free to quote me.
No. I like it. It's an interesting idea that you have to stay in the land of Israel in order to merit that. I think that there's definitely a tendency in Judaism to see, obviously, better things. You'll be blessed if you stay in the land, and you risk you put yourself in risk if you leave the land. So that's definitely conveyed here. There's that really powerful though line here, which is that, and it's interesting because I think it's hyper relevant when religious Jews, very religious Jews, say, look, we don't have to have the whole land of Israel, or maybe again, as some Hasidic Jews say, we shouldn't have any of the land of Israel until Messianic times. There's an interesting idea here, which is, how can some people say, and there are Jews who live actually in the West Bank, who say, even if the West Bank isn't under Israeli control, or it's under Israeli control, but if it wasn't in the future, or if part of it wasn't if there was a Palestinian state created within the boundaries of Israel, that's not necessarily going to be a problem for us. Why? Because if the rabbis teach us that the whole of it will be ours in Messianic times, then we don't have to have it until the Messianic times. And so it really allows for there to be this idea. I mean, I think this Midrash actually sets up very, very well what a lot of Israelis will tell you today, Orthodox Israelis who believe that the land is literally our promised land. It's not that we have to get it all at one time. Now, again, there's a counter to that. There's Palestinians who say, look, if we get a little homeland, we'll drive these rest of the Jews, eventually we'll drive them off. I mean, there's a counter narrative to that too. But the interesting thing is that we clearly believe the land is ours. I mean, the promised land idea is integral to Jewish belief, obviously, but not that the whole thing has to necessarily be given in one fell swoop, that it's not necessarily all given at one time. and that even taking part of it and living on part of it is a fulfillment of prophecy, at least the prophecy that you just read. So this is a really interesting midrash. It's not one that's necessarily like, you may never have heard it before, but this idea that people will inherit the land and maybe it will be inherited in pieces, something the rabbis seem to be okay with thousands of years ago. And maybe, again, there are people who still can make sense of it today. So here's what happens in Gerar, in the land.
Isaac obeyed the command of God, and he settled in Gerar. When he noticed that the inhabitants of the place began to have designs upon his wife, he followed the example of Abraham and pretended she was his sister. The report of Rebekah's beauty reached the king himself, but he was mindful of the great danger to which he had once exposed himself on a similar occasion, and he left Isaac and his wife unmolested. After they had been...
So wait a second. According to that midrash, that version of the story, it is exactly the same Avimelech, and Avimelech remembered and didn't have to go through this incident that he had with Abraham, where he actually, gets a plague on him because of what he did. Doesn't have that here. It doesn't say he did that. It says he kind of learned from his mistakes. But here's what he does do.
After they had been in Gerar for 3 months, Avimelech noticed that the manner of Isaac, who lived in the outer court of the royal palace, was that of a husband towards Rebekah. He called him to account, saying, "It might have happened to the king himself to take the woman you called your sister." Indeed, Isaac lay under the suspicion of having illicit intercourse with Rebekah, for at first the people of the palace would not believe that she was his wife. When Isaac persisted in his statement, Avimelech sent his grandees for them, ordered them to be arrayed in royal vestments, and had it proclaimed before them as they rode through the city, "These two are man and wife. He that touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death."
Yeah. Now, anybody have any feelings about that story?
So that sounds like the Purim story.
Sounds a lot like the Purim story. Exactly. Sounds a lot like Mordechai and Esther, which is why we have the midrash that Mordechai and Esther were actually betrothed, or would have been husband, or were husband and wife. Because when Mordechai hangs around the court all the time, it seems like he's behaving a little bit like a husband would. Now, again, a protective uncle might have done the same thing, but it really seems to be something that was a little bit deeper, which is why the rabbi said that Mordechai and Esther were either betrothed or were married. That this is kind of the subtext, or the kind of the unspoken kind of strange piece to this story. Not strange, but tragic, if you will, part of the story. I mean, I guess that's a judgment call, but I would say most people would say that's a tragic thing, that your wife gets taken away and gets put in a harem. I mean, having your niece or your adopted daughter get thrown into a harem is pretty bad too. It's all bad. But this scene where they proclaim throughout the city, it's like what happens when Haman has to lead Mordechai through the city and say, this is the man that the king wishes to honor. So there does seem to be that he's wearing the clothes of the king. So it is this, almost a version of maybe what should have happened in the Esther story. What is the kind of the what doesn't happen, the unrealized version of that story, which doesn't happen. By the way, we never read that Esther ever has kids with Achashverosh, just so you know. So that's what happens. That's where Avimelech this time, or this Avimelech, doesn't do the wrong thing. So what happens after that? That's not the end of the story.
Thereafter, the king invited Isaac to settle in his domains, and he assigned fields and vineyards to him for cultivation, the best the land afforded. But Isaac was not self-interested. The tithe of all he possessed he gave to the poor of Gerar. Thus he was the first to introduce the law of tithing for the poor, as his father Abraham had been the first to separate the priest's portion from his fortune. Isaac was rewarded by abundant harvests. The land yielded 100 times more than was expected, though the soil was barren and the year unfruitful. He grew so rich that people wished to have the dung from Isaac's she-mules rather than Abimelech's gold and silver.
That's Midrash is very very poetic and yeah, if nothing but that's a great image, right? Okay.
But his wealth called forth the envy of the Philistines, for it is characteristic of the wicked that they begrudge their fellow men the good and rejoice when they see evil descend upon them, and envy brings hatred in its wake. And so the Philistines first envied Isaac and then hated him. In their enmity toward him, they stopped the wells which Abraham had had his servants dig. Thus they broke their covenant with Abraham and were faithless, and they have only themselves to blame if they were exterminated later on by the Israelites.
Yeah, let's start with that last line. So the Canaanites started this feud, and so when the Israelites come back during the time of Joshua, the fact that they are going to be driven out, there's a reason for it. They deserve it because of what they try to do to our ancestor Isaac. So the Torah gives us one line, that Isaac sowed in the land and reaped 100-fold. It was miraculous that his income was amazing. And of course, this is coming out of a famine. So the fact that he's doing so well is miraculous. And so people want to be around him. They want a piece of his magic. He's the Warren Buffett of the Philistines. They want to be part of his good fortune. And so the first they want it all. They want it through him, and then they're not just wanting it, they envy him and they want to destroy him. And they don't want him to have anything. And so again, it's a lesson. The rabbis are teaching a lesson. This is why envy is such a bad thing. I mean, this is why it's one of the 10 commandments. Why we're not supposed to envy people's stuff, because it is it becomes active destruction. It's not a little thing. Envy leads to hate, leads to murder, leads to robbery, those kinds of things. So this is what happens. And so the Torah says that the Philistines envied him. By the way, this is another reason why it's oftentimes a Jewish tradition, if you will, a Jewish custom, not to brag about what you have. Evil eye, right? We say Kenahora, but there's a more than a magical element to this, which is that if you brag about the stuff you have, you create envy, and it leads to people wanting to take stuff away from you. And so it's not good behavior. It's not going to work well for you to talk about what you have. And so it's really kind of a Jewish tradition not to talk about it. It doesn't mean that there aren't Jews who follow. There's people who don't follow that in the Jewish community, but there is definitely a tradition of within the Jewish community of not talking about your wealth and not creating that type of envy and bad feeling towards you. So it says, and the Torah tells us specifically that the Philistines stopped up the wells. And so they actually tried to stop Isaac from, I mean, his livelihood is taken away, but his ability to have water is, and to live. And so this is a serious issue. I mean, to literally stop up the wells of somebody is to try to kill them. And so they violated the covenant. They violated the agreement that Avimelech had made. And so, according to the rabbis, they deserve what's going to come to them. They deserve the fact that they're going to one day, they're going to have the Israelites are going to come upon them. The Israelites are going to destroy them one day. So the Torah tells us that Isaac then goes through this interesting well digging exercise. He starts digging up wells. And so he goes to several places, and the rest of chapter 26 is Isaac digging up wells. And the wells end up getting names because of their being dug for Isaac and to help him as he's escaping the Philistines. So let's read what happens, or at least the way the Midrash tells us these wells are. We won't go through the whole Torah version of it, but the wells themselves are the Torah gives us names of places, these wells, as a lesson for Isaac and his survival here in chapter 26. So here's what happens.
Isaac departed from Gerar and began to dig again the wells of water which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father, and which the Philistines had stopped. His reverence for his father was so great that he even restored the names by which Abraham had called the wells. To reward him for his filial respect, the Lord left the name of Isaac unchanged, while his father and his son had to submit to new names.
Yep. That's an interesting thing about Isaac, too, that only Isaac doesn't have his name changed. Abraham was originally named Avram. Jacob is named Israel. Isaac doesn't have his name changed. So that's another kind of interesting, unique part of this patriarch. The patriarch that we don't know a lot about. The rabbis give us a lot of kind of cool things about him that only he had. So he is the middle child of the patriarchs, but he's also he also has a lot of special things, and his name doesn't get changed. And the connection there is that he kept the names of his father's wells, that he didn't rename them, that he called them the same names that his father did. So this is an interesting midrash, that his name gets to stay the same because he respected the names of his father's places. So interesting little midrash there, explaining why his name doesn't get changed and why the Torah teaches us that. So we read about these different wells that Isaac dug. So let's read it.
After 4 attempts to secure water, Isaac was successful. He found the well of water that followed the patriarchs. Abraham had obtained it after 3 diggings. Hence the name of the well, Beersheba, the well of 7 diggings, the same well that will supply water to Jerusalem and its environs in the Messianic time. Isaac's success with his wells, but served to increase.
So let's explain that first, the Beersheba thing.
Uh-huh.
The Torah does tell us that the last well that he digs is Beersheba, that it is the well of 7. Now it also is the well of. It's also a well of swearing, of making an oath. So that's an interesting thing too. It has kind of 2 different meanings. But what does it say? It says it's the well of success. It's the final place where he doesn't have any more problems. And so Beersheba, which we already learned about from Abraham's time, now is the place where we know that this is a well of kind of shalom, of peace. So my daughter just had to print something. Is this almost done? Oh no, you can't do it all now. I have to. All right, she has to. So we're co-officing here, and I apologize for the printing in the background. But what happens here is that this well of 7 is not just a well for Abraham, but according to the Midrash, it's a well that's going to have water in the Messianic era. So this is something that is not just a well of life, but it's a well of eternal life. It's a well that's going to exist in the future.
Beersheba is pretty far from Jerusalem.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, right? Because Beersheba is nowhere near Jerusalem. So what's going on here is that this well is going to be so powerful and so magical and wondrous that it's going to give water to Jerusalem. This is not, the rabbis knew geography well enough to know that this was not a normal kind of thing. And they also knew that Beersheba was
means water has to run uphill.
Yeah. And the water in Beersheba is coming into the drier part of Israel. It's in the Negev. So the rabbis knew what they were talking about here. When they're talking about this water supplying Jerusalem, that this is clearly a miraculous messianic type event, because it's not supposed to happen. What's interesting about Beersheba today, and the modern Israelis knew what Beersheba represented from the Bible and from the Midrash. They know, everybody is familiar with what Beersheba represents in the Bible. It is the place that the first prime minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, made his home. It's where he retired to. It's where he lived. It was for him. It's where he's buried, actually, too. It's very important to mention. He's not buried on Har Herzl. He's buried at Sde Boker, at his kibbutz in Beersheba. But what's interesting is that because it's such a dry part of Israel, Israel giving life to Beersheba and making Beersheba a place of life is really fulfilling this kind of messianic era idea that this is going to be a place that's going to give life to Israel. And the Negev is a primary area of development for the modern nation of Israel. They're trying to bring people away from the coastal areas of Tel Aviv and up through Haifa, which are developed and are almost overdeveloped, and trying to bring people into the Negev and to have Beersheba truly be one of the capitals of Israel, to be a major city for Israel. So that is happening right now in modern Israel, is that Beersheba is almost taking on that messianic era role of being a place of life. It's interesting and it's not coincidental. So now the fact that he's digging these wells, this doesn't keep the Philistines away from him. It's actually making things in some cases even harder for him, because now he's not living in the city. He's still getting chased. So as I said, this is the kind of stuff. This is the section that we're going to be finishing with today. Yep.
Isaac's success with his wells but served to increase the envy of the Philistines, for he had come upon water in a most unlikely spot, and besides, in a year of drought. But the Lord fulfills the desire of them that fear him. As Isaac executed the will of his Creator, so God accomplished his desire. And Avimelech, the king of Gerar, speedily came to see that God was on the side of Isaac, for to chastise him for having instigated Isaac's removal from Gerar, his house was ravaged by robbers in the night, and he himself was stricken with leprosy. The wells of the Philistines ran dry as soon as Isaac left Gerar, and also the trees failed to yield their fruit. None could be in doubt but that these things were the castigation for their unkindness.
Yeah, and so we don't have this in the Torah, but what happens when Isaac leaves is everything goes to hell. And that Avimelech gets hit with leprosy. Well, he deserved it because he went against the covenant. He made a deal with Isaac, and then he drove him out. And so Avimelech tries to repair the damage that he's done. Here's what happens.
Now Abimelech entreated his friends, especially the administrator of his kingdom, to accompany him to Isaac and help him win back his friendship. Abimelech and the Philistines spoke thus to Isaac: "We have convinced ourselves that the Shekinah is with you, and therefore we desire you to renew the covenant which your father made with us, that you will do us no hurt, as we also did not touch you." Isaac consented. It illustrates the character of the Philistines strikingly that they took credit to themselves for having done him no hurt. It shows that they would have been glad to inflict harm upon him, for the soul of the wicked desires evil.
Yeah, and so Avimelech goes and asks Isaac to come back, and he tells him that he says to him that we didn't hurt you. See, we didn't hurt you. And the Torah doesn't tell us that Avimelech gets hit with all these things, but it does tell us that Avimelech came and tried to get him back. And so when Avimelech comes back and says to Isaac, come back, Isaac says to him, why do you come to see me, seeing that you've been hostile to me and you've driven me away from me? This is in the Torah. And what they say to him is, we now plainly see the Lord has been with you, and we thought, let there be a sworn treaty between our two parties, between you and us. Let us make a pact with you that we will not, that you will not do us any harm, just as we have not molested you, but have always dealt kindly with you and send you away in peace. From now on, be you blessed of the Lord. Now, the Torah points out that they're claiming they didn't molest him. Well, that's kind of strange, because that's normal behavior. You don't molest people. You don't hurt people. But it shows you what the Canaanites were really like, because they wanted to, and they would have done, but God protected them. And so this is telling us what the Philistines, it's really Canaanites, but Canaanites are Philistines, what these people are really like. And so just remember that when we are dealing with other types of people, this is what we're dealing with, which is that their standard of living, their code of conduct, if you will, is so bad that what they think is good is just doing what you should be doing in the first place. You didn't do anything special. You behave like a human being. Keep that in mind. And again, this is kind of, we're going to kind of muscle through this, because I don't want to leave this section undone. But as you can see, we have a couple paragraphs yet to read. We'll read in the next few minutes. So here's what happens. The place.
The place in which the covenant was made between Isaac and the Philistines was called Shiva for two reasons: because an oath was sworn there, and as a memorial of the fact that even the heathen are bound to observe the 7 Noachian laws. For all the wonders executed by God for Isaac, and for all the good he enjoyed throughout his life, he is indebted to the merits of his father. For his own merits, he will be rewarded in future. On the great day of judgment, it will be Isaac who will redeem his descendants from Gehenna.
So let's explain one thing there just very quickly. The 7 Noahide laws are laws that everybody is supposed to follow. And so the other reason why it's called Beersheba is because they made an oath that they would follow the Noahide laws. And we know that eventually the Philistines, Canaanites, indigenous people did not follow those laws. Even those laws they couldn't follow. But here's what Isaac does. Isaac is going to not only help us here by kind of giving us the land, but what does he do for us in the world to come? And specifically on, again, getting back to what to one of Marcia's points, is this seems a little Christological. This section is really Christological in our minds, but is really Jewish originally, which is there'll be a day of judgment. And on that day of judgment, it's going to be Isaac who keeps us from going to hell. Here's this wonderful Midrash. I really did want to get to this today, and we did. So let's read this wonderful section here, at least this section. We'll finish with this. For all the wonders.
On that day, the Lord will speak to Abraham, thy children have sinned, and Abraham will make reply, then let them be wiped out, that thy name be sanctified. The Lord will turn to Jacob, thinking that he who had suffered so much in bringing his sons to manhood's estate would display more love for his posterity. But Jacob will give the same answer as Abraham. Then God will say, the old have no understanding and the young no counsel. I will now go to Isaac. Isaac.
Okay, pause right there, because I got to explain that. So here's what it just said. On the day of judgment, the final day of judgment, Abraham and Jacob both won't defend us. And there's this line that and again, you got to see this. It basically is based on lines from Proverbs, which are, the old don't have understanding, the young have no counsel. You're not going to find it. You sometimes don't find wisdom anywhere. So the old is Abraham, the young is Jacob, but Isaac is going to defend us. And Isaac is going to defend us, the Jewish people, from destruction. This is
like Moses.
Yep. And this is going to be what he says. So, but this isn't Moses was at Mount Sinai. We're going to see that actually played out here. No, this is in the world to come, and this is so we can get to heaven. But that's not the craziest point of this. Let's read this.
Isaac, God will address him, thy children have sinned, and Isaac will reply, O Lord of the world, say you my children and not yours?
That's Moses right there. Yeah.
When they stood at Mount Sinai and declared themselves ready to execute all your bidding before they even heard it, you called Israel my firstborn, and now they are my children and not yours. Let us consider the years of a man.
So everybody gets that right now?
Yeah.
They took the law at Mount Sinai. They said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we'll do it even before we hear it. These are your people. These are your people, God. They're not my children. They're your children, which is what we really want Moses to flat out say. He kind of says it not as confrontational as Isaac just did. Now, here's the great part right here. This is a lesson about our lives, God willing, right?
Let us consider. The years of a man are 70. From these, 20 are to be deducted, for you inflict no punishment upon those under 20. Of the 50 years that are left, 1/2 are to be deducted for the nights passed in sleep. There remain only 25 years, and these are to be diminished by 12.5, the time spent in praying, eating, and attending to other needs in life, during which men commit no sins. That leaves only 12 years and half. If you will take these upon yourself, well and good. If not, take 1/2 of it, and I will take the other half. The descendants of Isaac will then say, verily, you are our true father. But he will point to God and admonish them, no, give not your praises to me, but to God alone. And Israel, with eyes directed heavenward, will say, you, O Lord, are our Father, our Redeemer from everlasting is your name.
Wow. And the last line we're just going to read. We'll finish here. It was Isaac, or sometimes called Elihu, son of Barachel, who revealed the mysteries of nature in his arguments with Job. So it kind of goes along with that last part. Isaac is now drawn into the Job story. We never knew who Elihu is, Job's friend, who's the only one who makes sense. They're saying that this is Isaac as well. Why? Because Isaac has an amazing insight into life, which is that, first of all, God, they're your people. They're not my people. They're not somebody else. You're responsible for the people. But if that's not enough, God, if it's not just the fact that you've already claimed these people, they're yours. Too bad. Good and bad, they're yours. Let's think about their lives for 1 second, which is that if a human being gets to live 70 years, which, as we know, that's considered to be, you get 70 years, you get more, you're in bonus time, right? So you get 70 years, you got a full life. 20 years of those, you're a young person. You're not responsible for what happens until you're 20, which, by the way, is a great line and a great lesson for parents who've had to deal with, teenagers. For the first 20 years, it's not their fault. It's all hormones. It's not their fault. You can't blame a person for what they do in the first 20 years. Here's the great thing. Of the 50 years that are left, half the time we're sleeping. We didn't do anything bad then. We're sleeping. And then when we're awake, you got to take off about half that time because we're eating, we're praying, we're doing other things in life, going to the bathroom. We're not doing stuff that we can do any sins with, which, by the way, obviously can sin with those kind of things too. But the rabbis are saying, no, those are just normal behaviors. Those aren't, you don't really have no free will over those. You just do them. I mean, praying obviously is something you should choose to do, but they're almost saying that's just normal behavior. You're spending good chunk of your life doing those things. So then what are you left with? What are you actually left with where you're doing bad things, right? Maybe 12 and a half years of your entire 70 years, you were doing bad stuff. That's nothing. And Isaac says, you know what? I'll take half of their responsibility of humanity on me. God, you take the other half. Then what are we left with? We're left with like 6 years. So you're going to tell me that 10% of a man's life is bad and you're going to hold him responsible for that? That's ridiculous. So he uses a mathematical argument with God to basically say human beings are not that bad. We're not that bad. We can't be that bad. There's not enough time to do that much bad. We're not that bad. And so this is the argument that Isaac uses with God. It's a wonderful midrash because, it could be anybody having this argument with God. Any of us could make this argument with God. How bad are we really? We don't really do that much bad in our lives. It's Isaac. It's Isaac who has this conversation. So I definitely I wanted everybody to see that. I wanted you to see what the rabbis thought about us and our behavior. At the end of the day, this is where Midrash really is kind of golden, which is to teach us about our lives. And the fact that most of us, and maybe we have a little bit more time to get in trouble now over the next couple of weeks, but chances are, if we don't leave our house, we can't be responsible for that too. If I were Isaac, I'd say, what can anybody do now? They're all locked in. So, it's a really wonderful midrash because it's basically saying, really, are human beings really that bad? If you think about how much time we spend in this world, it's really not that bad. But you could also make the argument, you don't have that much time in this world either. If you want to look at it that way, if we get 70 years and you're going to sleep through half of it, it's really not that much time. When you take into consideration the other stuff you have to do just to live, you don't have that much time, so don't waste it. So it's a really cool idea. It's one definitely we want to kind of reiterate and stress today, that even when we're not able to go out, even when we're not able to do the things that we would normally want to do, there is stuff we can do. We always have freedom to do some really good things too. So I think we all engaged in a little bit of Torah study today and made a little bit of our time today valuable. So in addition to whatever else you do today, you got to study some Midrash. So
who's going out for lunch?
Yeah.
Who's going to? I just want to tell you, one of the great lessons about this, I don't know if anybody's else pointed this out, but pretty much the only thing we're doing right now is going to the grocery store. I think we're spending more time in the grocery stores right now than we ever have in our lives. People are, even when you want to get out of there quick, you realize I'm going to the grocery store like almost every day. But it's a really great lesson. Look at the empty shelves. And when you see what people are not buying, it really is a great education on what will people not eat. You look through the shelves and say, gosh, even now people won't eat those. This is a great lesson that, turkey, pepper.
What is that?
People ate the tofu, by the way. The vegetarian piece by me was all gone. Everything was gone. But turkey pepperoni, nobody wanted turkey pepperoni. I looked at that and said, this is the only thing in the section that nobody wants is turkey pepperoni. So, it's a great lesson in what people really won't eat no matter what.
There's also a lot more organic stuff available than regular.
You notice that?
We buy turkey pepperoni.
I'm just telling you, there was a whole bunch of it left. I mean, and everything else around it was gone. It was almost like, I almost felt bad for the turkey. I almost wanted to buy it because I felt no one loved the turkey pepperoni.
Oh my God. You've been inside too long, Blazer.
Hey, Mark,
can I ask? Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask the group? We're having a hard time trying to find a store that'll deliver. Everybody seems to have too long of a waiting, time period. And I'm getting a little nervous daily about going out because Tim and I really have some risk issues. Anybody have any ideas? I heard Instacart won't do it now. I heard Walmart won't do it now. Any ideas on delivery?
Can't you call the stores and ask them to deliver?
I looked at Albertsons and Vaughn's, and they said they're not doing it right now either.
What about
others,
Ralph's?
I haven't looked at Ralph's yet. I haven't looked at Ralph's.
What
I'll
about
check.
like Uber Eats or something?
Well, I heard Instacart's not doing it, so I assumed Uber. But isn't Uber Eats only restaurants? I don't know.
You might want to look at the meal kit services like Home Chef, because they're still delivering.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Okay, I like that one. Yeah, I'm just getting a little bit more nervous as we approach closer to it being a bigger problem. I'm really trying to keep social distancing.
They've got hours. I don't know if they're doing this in Santa Cruz. Out here, they're doing senior hours.
Yes, here too.
And they're also for immunocompromised people. So they're like only letting 150 people in the store at a time, and then you have to line up distanced outside to get in.
Well, yeah, that was my concern, because this morning for Costco, it was senior hour, but it was lined up almost down the side of the building. And I'm a little worried about that distancing, but yeah, I don't know. It's just it's becoming a little bit more uncomfortable daily. I went to
a Valley. They were early. There was hardly anybody in there.
Where?
Valley Produce. That's the place. Yeah. And people wearing masks, so they're in the
less crowded.
Yeah, not crowded at all. If you go there right after opening, they revised the hours. I'm going to say I can't remember if it starts at 8 a.m. or 9. I don't think they have a specific senior hour, but for all intents and purposes, when you go
Ralph's is open from 7 to 8 for seniors.
Okay.
Walmart is 7 to 9, I think.
Oh, that's a long time.
I think that's what I read.
Well, and so is Costco, I think, 2 hours.
That's us.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I do.
We had a pizza delivered.
I want to.
Oh yeah, the food service.
But how much pizza can you really eat?
Just one day, and then I froze the rest, and
every day.
I got a.
I can't eat pizza.
I just want to remind people. Yeah,
it was for Mark?
I just want to remind people. I told some of you, and again, not that this is going to be necessarily the way it's going to be, the way it's going to unfold. I think some of you probably have read or heard this, but I've been on the phone with some of my friends in China over the last few days, and they are definitely back to normal in China. The only things that are closed are schools and colleges. They're still closed. It's still, according to people I'm talking to, it's very quiet on the streets of China. There aren't a lot of people out and going to the malls and things, but they're all open. So it's not crowded, but they're all open. And to kind of give you an understanding of it, that's basically, it was like 7 weeks from when most of those guys started getting locked down, and was the end of January. So again, I don't know if this is going to follow the same trajectory that we'll have here. And again, I mean, we really don't know, but they are, people are, and again, I don't know what's going to happen in America, whether people are going to feel comfortable going out, or what's going to happen. I'm guessing some people will and some people won't, but I think that, it's important just to keep in mind that that's what they did. And again, they did lock people down. I'd say, they locked people down pretty harshly. I mean, they didn't mess around. People in China tend to follow when the government says something, they tend to respond to it. So again, it's hard to know whether it's going to follow the same. We'll do the same stuff here, but you should know that though. So.
Did you hear what the governor of Texas told seniors in Texas today?
No.
That they're expendable, and so that they should be out there and risking their lives so that they could improve the economy.
Get out.
No, come on.
Check it out, Governor of Texas's message.
That's crazy.
I was appalled. I was shocked. It was unbelievable. Anyone over 70 is, you lived your 70 years. Right?
There you
so
go.
Out and improve the economy.
Is this the Darwinian approach to pandemic economics or something? Or it's kind of weird. But
Right?
I don't. I got to see that story. I did not see that story. I didn't see.
Also, the mayor of Las Vegas basically is saying, you know, I'm not going to do this stuff. I mean, I'd have to read it again, but the stuff. I mean, China, seriously. I mean, the problems stem from them, but they clamp down, you know, early to solve it, and it all depends on how quickly we do it. They say they're, you know, we're still at least 2 or 3 weeks away from the, you know, the peak of, you know, in New York, they say with all the restrictions, they're still seeing a doubling of cases. We definitely need to do.
And our governor is in New York is doing everything he really is possible to do.
Oh yeah.
But those supplies are not on their way.
Mm-hmm.
And those Comfort and Mercy ships are still not ready for medical cases that are not COVID-19.
Well, there's a Navy ship that's supposedly coming in with 1,000 beds, and they're supposed to be set up.
I think it's here. I think it's in. Yeah. It's already in the port of LA.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it's supposed to go to New York
yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, there's two.
I miss you all.
What did they say?
With all due respect,
hi, Eric.
With all due respect, Phyllis. With all due respect, Phyllis, I just looked up what you said, and it's totally out of context. So I would hope everybody will do research about what was said by the.
Oops.
Where did you find that, Erica?
Oops, she's muted. You got on me.
There's an article on the Daily Beast, which is definitely not a right-wing. But if you read the whole article, you get the whole context of what was said.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, with all that, Rabbi, I just really want to thank you and our synagogue for all the support and for the beautiful challahs that were received in our store.
I wish there was more stuff we could do. I kind of feel, we're doing our best. Tracy's pushing out ideas all the time. She's trying to, now we're going to be able to get food to people for Passover, which
that was wonderful as well.
Look,
Rabbi,
that's a little thing. I mean, look, we hope. We hope people don't have to use that service, because one of the good things about being at home is we're cooking a lot more, and we're enjoying making recipes and things like that around our house. We've got our daughter Dina's at home and is cooking every day. She's making stuff constantly. It's kind of cool. So look, I'm hoping people can actually have some fun with Passover this year. I mean, Lord knows I can't stand Passover food, as you know, but as I've made very clear numerous times. But I'm hoping that, given the fact that we, the reality of us not being able to be together with large groups for Passover is going to make Seder's almost impossible, that at least we can have some fun with food for Passover and being creative and maybe making some recipes or doing some cool things with Passover that we don't normally do. So I'm hoping that people can do that. But again, we will have it. And, God willing, hopefully things don't get worse with groceries that allow people to do that. I posted up about the Ralph's thing. I wasn't doing that to cause panic or to tell people there isn't stuff there. There is stuff there, and it's still there. And I'm getting updates from people. I just got an update from a friend of mine who lives up in Ventura, and the Ventura grocery stores, at least this one he showed me, has a pretty good selection. Even of the 5-pound boxes of matzah are there at the Yehuda matzahs, for people who like the Yehuda matzahs, that they have them for the 5-pound box for $9.99. But the reason that my friend told me about this, my friend Jim from Ralph's, is that he's just worried that they're going to run out of stuff, and that they're not going to get Ralph's. The point that they were making is that they just don't know whether they're going to get enough in stock to match the need, which his point was, it went up because of all the Passover tours and cruises and stuff being canceled. A lot more people are going to be buying groceries this year than normal. So it's not that there's necessarily a shortage now. but to encourage people to get stuff this week, because again, by next week, it may be not a good situation. And again, I definitely don't want people to hoard or to take stuff that they wouldn't normally get, but that just to keep in mind that if they don't get new shipments from back east, they will be out of Passover items. So again, just to be alert about it and to get it maybe a little earlier than you might normally do, a week or so earlier than normal. So
Rabbi,
it's not that it's gone yet.
What's your favorite matzah?
It's a good question. I hate it. But of the ones that exist, I think I like the Osam or Yehuda better than Manischewitz. I think Manischewitz is my least favorite matzah. I'm trying to.
Did you ever try the spelt matzah?
No, and I don't. Yes, I have. I don't like spelt matzah. But I can't remember if it's the Osam or Yehuda that I like the most. But I think I like the Osam the most. Osam is actually from Israel, and that's not why I like it the most. I just think it tastes a little bit
less bad.
Less bad, yeah. It's the less bad version of matzah.
And if there's a run on bread after the holidays, we'll all have matzah in-house.
Hey, listen, that's the one thing that's kind of hard to find, right? Some days is bread. So we'll see if the Jews change the bread aisles at all. I don't know that I don't know that we'll be able to have an impact on the bread aisles, but yeah, that's one of those items, those restricted items that people are seeing a run of.
Mark, are we going to see you tomorrow night? Are you going to do your Wednesday night
Yes,
class?
I was just going to say, so Wednesday night we'll be on the 7 o'clock class. We had a really nice attendance last week. Hope that we'll have everybody with us for Wednesday night. And then Friday night we'll be doing our service again. We had a really good service, 5 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, we actually had a problem with the bandwidth. We actually went down for the first 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, about 14 minutes, it came back, and we had no problems after that. But
I just went on Facebook Live when you went down.
Yeah.
Yes. So we did it ourselves. We have the services at home. Ronnie and I do everything, just the two of us. It's so loving.
So I promise you it's going to be different this week. It'll not be the same service. It also is going to have some different music, some new melodies, some different stuff. And I also will tell you that everybody's not on here right now. So this is actually a good story. You can tell other people this story because this is a really interesting story. So we did have some technical problems, mainly because I tried to get it out simultaneously on YouTube Live and on Facebook. If I had only done one, it probably would have been fine. So I tried to be really clever and try to be technologically really proficient by doing both, and that actually caused it to flop at first. So I figured out a way to do it. We had one person broadcast it. We ended up following them. But I want to tell you what crazy thing happened. This is crazy. Crazy story.
How crazy.
So one of the things that Alyssa likes to do, as some of you know, or hopefully all of you know if you come to Friday night services when she does it, she likes to do an Adon Olam to Scarborough Fair, right?
Yes.
Yes. People know that? That's kind of one of her signature pieces. So here's what happened. When we posted it up on Facebook Live, we immediately had the live feed blocked by Universal Music Group.
Oh, jeez.
They have bots that were able to recognize Universal Music Group representing Simon and Garfunkel, recognize the melody, and were able to block it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is crazy. That tells you that our technology is far more advanced than I could have ever imagined, because how their bot recognized the melody, and she does a good melody of it, don't get me wrong, but they were able to catch the Adon Olam as an infringement of Universal Music Group. So I hope Simon and Garfunkel are happy that they caused our service to get two nice Jewish guys ended up having our song pulled. No, it was not their fault. But look, we don't want to infringe on artists and everything else. I will tell you that the last week's service is back up, and they didn't catch it now that it's been reposted. So if you want to watch Friday night service, it's up on YouTube. It's also up on Facebook Live. And this week's service will be different and different melodies. It took a lot more time to do that than it would to do a normal Friday night service. That's all I'll say. But it was definitely a labor of love. Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more quick thing.
Yes.
Last week and this week, and I just sent Lori Lytell an email asking her if there's some way to set up a donation kind of like through our credit card right now, where that if we like what we're doing and we're all not going out to lunch, we can maybe be making high donations to our synagogue right now to help to bolster some of our, our funding. I mean, we're losing a lot by not being able to do our gala and other things. So I just sent that to Lori. I don't know if it's real or right or any of that.
Listen,
good idea.
We definitely don't want to feel like we're asking people.
No, and that's not my intent.
So look, I mean, I have no issue. You could say that we could say that it was your idea.
Well, I absolutely think you should.
Well, I don't. It's very sweet of you.
I agree, but I just think it's right now is a time that we need to be thinking about each other. Listen, all of us are in a different socioeconomic area, but even those of us can afford $18. I mean, I'm loving what you're giving us right now, and I know you're not doing it to raise money, but I'd like to support our synagogue in that small little way. Anyway, I sent Lori an email. I'm hoping I'll get a response. Judith, are you having
I will tell you this. There's no issue, by the way, and people have done it in the past because a few people have done it for their birthdays. It doesn't have to be done for a birthday, but like Erica Schwartz raised a lot of money for us asking people for their birthday. But so if a congregant wants to put up one of those up on the website near the stuff, we'll definitely promote it. I think it's actually maybe even better if, all joking aside, if somebody else does it and not the synagogue.
I'm not tech savvy, and that's what I wrote to Lori.
No, I understand. But if somebody that's not the temple puts it up, we'll definitely encourage people to visit it. We won't discourage people from visiting it. Let's put it that way. Yeah. If somebody wants to post it up on their thing, we'll share it on our website, and then it'll be very cool.
So if I go on our temple web Facebook, is that what you're saying? If I
just regular Facebook, Marcia.
Just regular Facebook.
Like your Facebook.
Your Facebook, and you can there's a link I don't
know how to do the links.
There's a choice somewhere, to start a fundraiser.
Okay. I'll look at it. I just
also, before we all run off, you've probably guessed that the women's retreat has been postponed.
Yeah.
We are looking at September 11th currently as the rescheduled date. Those of you who couldn't come in April, maybe you'll be able to come in September. We'd love to have you. There'll be a notice going out that if people want their money back, we can send them a refund. We can hold it. We can donate it for you somewhere, whatever you'd like. That'll be going out. Tell your friends. Erica, that means you can come this time.
Yay.
She's gonna get mad at me later.
She's already mad at me for saying bad stuff about the Texas governor.
Everybody, listen, one of the great things is to have everybody together, even for a couple hours like we did just now. It definitely makes the day, it gives the day
absolutely
more than just going to the grocery store and watching television. So
we're also putting,
I never would have thought, again, how important all the stuff that we do, to make our lives meaningful and special, even in these times, or maybe especially in these times. It's really wonderful. And again, I want to thank everybody.
Absolutely.
We're not even going to the grocery store for our full 14 days because of our London extravaganza, where we decided to just not come home for as long as we could.
When did you get back?
Friday night.
Okay.
What'd you say, Phyllis?
I love seeing you all,
Oh.
even if it's your faces, but you're in motion and.
That's right.
Yes.
That's true.
Listen,
And we've
I'll see
decided,
you Wednesday night.
yeah, and we've
I'm checking
decided,
out.
we've decided to put Washington on hold for now.
and definitely, guys, everybody join us for and bring other people. I mean, some people may not want to come to the class, but everybody, put out there the Friday night services. We ended up having about 300 people.
Oh my God.
Watching the Friday night service. And
Wow.
look, I mean, it's
Bye.
it's good.
Bye,
So,
Phyllis
all
and
right.
Ronnie.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye, Marty.
See you tomorrow.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow night.